The Gemara in Beya, Daf Yud Zayin Amid Aleph, brings a brisa.
Put the Gemara.
The brisa says that even though it's mutter on Yom Tiv to cook, tzeichel nefesh, one is allowed to cook on Yom Tiv, but one can only cook on Yom Tiv l'tzarech hayom, that which is needed that very day. One cannot cook on Yom Tiv for tomorrow, for choil. Even to cook on the first day Yom Tiv for the second day Yom Tiv is also forbidden. It's also to cook on the first day Yom Tiv for the second day Yom Tiv. Because one of the 2 days, the first day may be Yom Tiv, second day may be choil. We treat it like a suffix. So it's also to cook on Yom Tiv for the second day. One can only cook. One can only cook.
Someone is talking in the background. If you can kindly mute yourself for Baisai. In fact, Mordechai, I think you can mute everybody's class.
One can only cook on Yom Tov for that very day. However, the Brisa says a chiddush that a baker who needs he needs hot water for baking, the tzarech Yom Tov. So let's say he needs just 1 quart of water. That's all he needs for today. But he can fill up a whole barrel, a whole large pot of water. even though he only needs 1 quart, but he can fill up a whole pot of water before it's on the fire, and then place the whole pot of water on the fire. And even though he's cooking a lot more than he needs for today, it's okay to do that. Because since he's doing all the cooking in one maisa, so that's called ריבוי בשיעורים, and that's mutar on Yom Tov. If the pot is already on the fire and he's got enough water in that pot for Yom Tov, for that day of Yom Tov, and while the pot is on the fire, he wants to pour in some more water, that would be awesome. Because that extra pouring is cooking shelo tzarech hayom. But here he's filling up the pot before it's on the fire, and now he's putting the pot the way it is with the 5 quarts of water on the fire all at once. So even though he's cooking a lot more than he needs, but since he's doing it with 1 tircha, 1 peula, that's called ריבוי בשיעורים, and that's mutar. And this is not only true by cooking, this is true by any melacha that's permitted on Yom Tov, for example, carrying. We know that you're allowed to carry on Yom Tov, but again, you can only carry on Yom Tov if it's a tzarech Yom Tov. You can't carry on Yom Tov for tomorrow. So let's say somebody needs some tissues in shul. He needs to raise 10, 15 tissues. So he's allowed to carry a whole box, 100 tissues, even though he doesn't need more than 15. It's mutar to carry the whole box of tissues, because that's ריבוי בשיעורים. Since he's doing it all one maisa, he's doing it all in one maisa. There's 1 peula of carrying, so that's ריבוי בשיעורים, and that's mutar. That's mutar on Yom Tov. Although you state in the Gemara, that's how we paskin la'aloch. The shaila is the cases that we spoke about up until now were cases where you are being marba more of the same kind. I need 1 quart of water and I'm cooking 5 quarts. I need 15 tissues and I'm carrying 100 tissues. So I'm being marba more of the same kind. But what about being marba a different min? Let's say I want to carry a key. I want to leave my house, and I can't leave my house unlocked. It's not safe. So I'm allowed to carry my key to shul to be able to get back home. Otherwise, they wouldn't go to shul in the first place. I wouldn't go to shul keeping my door unlocked. And I have no safe place to keep it, so I'm allowed to carry it. It's called the tzarech hayom. Well, let's say on the key ring are other keys. I have the key to my office. I have the key to to my desk, other keys. I'm not talking about I have my car keys. Those car keys is a shiloh of muksa. It's a whole different shiloh. But I have other keys which are not muksa, but I have no need. There's no tzorech. I only have a tzorech to carry the keys of my home. So do we say, but since I'm doing it all in one meiser, one pula, so to be sure, since I need the one key of my home that I need, that's a tzorech yomtiv, so I can carry all the keys. Since I'm doing it all one pula, that's Rebbe Shurim. Or do we say no? Rebbe Shurim is only to do more of the same kind, like carrying a whole bunch of tissues more than I need, cooking more water, more meat than I need. But here I'm carrying different keys. I only need my house keys, and I'm carrying other keys together. Maybe there's no head to Rebbe Shurim to carry more of the same kind. So this is a very big machlokes achronim. It's very negel l'maisa. This is a very big machlokes achronim. Ramosha in a tshuva or a chayim, chelik hey, simin lamed hey, paskins l'chumra. As I know, the head to Rebbe Shurim only applies to carry more of the same kind, but to carry other meaning, different other meaning that I have no need for, there's no head to Rebbe Shurim. On the other hand, there Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa, Shuz Be Moshe, there are other Yidolei HaPaiskim that are Mekel. They're Mekel, and they hold that even to carry more, even to carry other minim is also had to be sure. And we want to discuss that. In fact, the Chofetz Chaim in Machne Yisrael, Chofetz Chaim in Sefer Machne Yisrael, it's a Sefer he wrote for soldiers in the army. So yeah, he discusses a shaila. If a soldier is stationed in a certain place, and on Shabbos, it's decided, the commander decided that they got to move on, and it's Shabbos today. So what should he do? He has his whole suitcase with all his belongings, can't carry it. He's got nobody else to carry it for him, so he has to leave it all behind. That's Hefsed Meruba. So Chofetz Chaim looks for an eitzah for this soldier. So Chofetz Chaim says the following. He says that he can be makel, because even if he leaves behind his suitcase with all his belongings, his clothing, whatever else he has, but the rifle he's going to have to carry. That's Puch Nefashos. That he's going to have to carry with him. So once he's carrying the rifle, to carry all the other belongings is Rebbe Shurim. It's Rebbe Shurim. We're going to see about this a bit later. But the Chofetz Chaim considers this Rebbe Shurim. Now, because of the rifle, he's matir to carry all his other belongings. It's not more. He's not carrying up more rifles than he needs. He's carrying other items, and Chofetz Chaim considers that Rebbe Shurim. So we'll see about this. So we have a big machlokes Gedolei HaPaiskim, whether Rebbe Shurim is only a heter to do more of the same kind, or no? Rebbe Shurim is a heter even to carry, to cook different minim, different kinds. As long as I do it all together in one pula, one maisa, there's a heter Rebbe Shurim. This shaila is totally in machlokes Rishonim, in Maseches Beya. In Maseches Beya, the Ran asks a kasha on this heter Rebbe Shurim. The Gemara in Menachos that seems to contradict this whole concept of Rebbe Shurim. Gemara Menachos is talking about you have a cholim Zucker on Shabbos. Cholim Zucker on Shabbos, who needs to eat 2 groyers, and he needs 2 figs, 2 dry figs. That's what he needs to be nisrape, to be healed from his illness. He has a dangerous illness. It's because the nefashos, and he needs 2 groyers, and these groyers are still attached to the tree. So of course, it's because nefashos, so he's allowed to pull them off the tree, cook the fascias. But the Gemara has a shaila that he had, let's say the matzav is such. On the tree, there's one twig that has 3 groigusin attached to that one twig. He doesn't need 3, he only needs 2. He has 3. So in other words, with one cut, he'll detach 3 groigusin. And in addition, there are 2 other twigs. Each one has one groigus. So what's better? What should he do? Should he choose the one that has 3? Because that way he does just one cut, one pula, but he's cutting 3 groigusin, one more than he really needs. Or should he rather cut the 2 single twigs, even though he's doing two acts of toilish, but at least he's not detaching 3 more than he needs. He's only cutting 2 groigusin. That's the Gemara Shaila. And the Gemara's conclusion is it's better to cut the one that has 3 rather than cut the 2 that have 1 each. Because it's better to do less betzira, less harvesting. That's what the Gemara says. Zucker, you see from this Gemara, the whole shaila the Gemara has was, the whole subject of the Gemara was, should he cut the 1 twig that have 3, or should he cut the 2, make 2 separate cuts with 1 each? Because 1 with 3 has a chasaron that he's detaching 3, which is 1 more than he needs. But on the other hand, to cut the 2, he's doing two meisim of 2 talishas. He's doing two acts of cutting. He's cutting 2 twigs. So that's a shaila. Is it better to cut 1 with 3 or to cut 2 single ones? That's more suffix, and more concludes better to cut the 1 with 3. But it's masha from the Gemara. Let's say his choice would be like this. He has 1 twig that has 3 groigusin attached, and the other twig that has 2. He has 1 twig with 3 groigusin, and the other twig only has 2. It seems from the Gemara that would be absolutely no shaila. Of course, in that case, he cuts the 1 with 2, not the 1 with 3. The whole Gemara suffix was when you have 2 with 2. So you're doing 2 acts of tlisha. So there the Gemara tzad, and the maskana is rather do 1 ma'isa tlisha and cut 3 than to cut 2, then do 2 ma'isa of toilish and cut 2. But if a person has 2 twigs, one of them has 3 groigusin attached, the other one has 2, then there's no shaila that avada he cuts the 1 with 2. I don't even say from the Gemara. Fake the Ran Nakasha. Why should that be so? Even if there's a head to read B'shurim, even if he has an option to cut the 1 with 2, it still should be mutter to cut the 1 with 3, because he's doing 1 ma'aser toilish. And he needs 2 are mutter because of kul nefashos. So why should there be head to be B'shurim? Just like you're allowed to put a pot of water, even though you're putting a lot more water than you need. But since you're doing it all in 1 ma'aser, you're allowed to do it. You're allowed to do it. Because Rebbe Shurim. So why should it be us to cut the twig that has 3? Granted, he has an option to cut another one that has only 2. That doesn't matter. There's a head to Rebbe Shurim. It should be no problem to cut the 1 with 3, even though he only needs 2. Although you fake the Ran account. So the Ran brings 2 answers to this. He first brings from the Ri, and it's also the shit of the Rashba, the Inachinami. Min Torah, it's certainly mutter to cut the 1 with 3. Even though he has an option to cut 1 with 2, Min Torah, it's mutter to cut the 1 with 3, because we be sure. Just like on Yom Tov, there's had to be sure. On Shabbos, there's also had to be sure. But Midrabanan, they were machmir not to be soimach, not to use really shurim on Shabbos. Because of the chumrah of Shabbos, Shabbos is skila, is an issa skila. Yom Tov is only an Issa Lav. So Chumra the Shabbos, Chazal were machmir not to rely on Rebbe Shurim on Shabbos. But it's only Mirabanan. Minatayr is talking no chilik between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Mirabanan Chazal were machmir on Shabbos and did not allow Rebbe Shurim. That's the shit of the Rav. The Ran is matmiya on this shit on the Rashba. He says he doesn't understand. If this is true, that Minat Torah, there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov, and Minat Torah Rebbe Shurim is mutan Shabbos just as it's mutan Yom Tov. The whole Issa Rebbe Shurim on Shabbos is only midrabanan. So what is the Gemara's suffix if you have one with three and you have two with one each? What's the Gemara's suffix? Of course you take the one with three. Because you take the one with three, you're only violating one melacha, because once you're cutting the one, the rest are Rebbe Shurim. So you're doing just one Issa Daraisa, we have to be matir. If you're going to cut the two with one each, we have to be matir two Isurim Daraisa. Doing 2 7 Maisa of Tailish. So of course, if there's a choice, that's the rule on Kalakal. If you have a choice of doing 2 different pulais of Kuchna Fashes, you take the one that has less Isurim. So if you have a choice of taking the one with 3 or taking 2, making 2 cuts, one each, of course you should take the one with 3. There should be no shum suffix, because we take the one with 3. So it's all one pula, and the Rashba holds that Midaraisa there's no Issa Rebbe Shurim and Shabbos, just like on Yom Tov there's no Issa. So it's just a Drabonadik Issa. So of course you take the one with 3. One with 3, you're just doing one act of Chol Shabbos, because once we're matir for one Gregors, the other 2 come along for a free ride. It's Rebbe Shurim. We have to just be matir one. Mashenke, when you have 2 twigs with 2 7 gravers in, and you're going to be doing 2 separate meisim of toilish, we've got to be matir 2 isurim. We got to matir 2 separate acts of toilish. So of course you have to take the one with 3. So therefore the Ran disagrees, and the Ran says, you see from this Gemara clearly that Rebbe Shurim on Shabbos is an Issa Daraisa. And that's why the Gemara is a strong tzad to say, take the 2, even though you're doing 2 acts of Tailish, but Saftasav, we only are being mati 2 Isurim. When you take the one with 3, we're being mati 3 Isurim. Even though it's one pula, but if Rebbe Shurim is awesome in our Torah, so every extra grade was in is an extra Chilul Shabbos. So if you're going to take the one with 3, you're going to be doing 3 acts of Chilul Shabbos. You take the 2 with 1 each. It's only 2 acts of Chilul Shabbos. Then why the very good suffix that maybe it's better to take the 2 with 1 rather than take the 1 with 3. Therefore the Ran shit is that Rebbe Shurim on Shabbos is awesome in our Torah. Why should it be different than Yom Tov? That was the Rashba's kasha. Why should Shabbos be different than Yom Tov? If on Yom Tov doesn't have to be Shurim, so why should Shabbos be different? When you're doing something on Shabbos for Pikuach Nefashis, why shouldn't there be a heta or be Shurim just like on Yom Tov? When you're doing something for Eichel Nefesh or you're doing something for Tzorech Hayoim, we say that you could be Mabeh Shurim, even though as long as you are doing it all in one Maisa, you can do extra more than what you need for today. So that's Rebbe Shurim. Since you're doing it all one pool, one Maisa, it's mutter to be Ma'abed Shurim. So why should Shabbos be any different? Zucker Ran, because there's a basic difference between the heta of doing Melacha on Yom Tov, Tzorech Hayoim, Tzorech Nefesh, or any other Tzorech, because Yom Tov is Hutra. Shabbos, even when you're doing a Melacha, Tzorech Pikuach Nefashis, it's not Hutra, it's Hutcha. There's 2 separate concepts. There's a concept of Hutra, which means it's Mutter, Heter Gomer. Heter Gomer. Hutra means there is really an Issa there just being pushed to the side. When you have Hutra, there's there's certain chumras, you can avoid it, you got to avoid it. Different chumras that the Gemara says in different places, in different mesechtas, in hutra and hutra. So Ran over here says this is one of the differences. If it's hutra, then we allow ריבוי שיעורים. So on Yom Tov, where oichel nefesh or any malacha that's being done the tzorech hayom, that's hutra. If it's hutra, so then we once you're doing it, as long as you're doing it all in one ma'isa, you can add more shiurim. You don't have to be mitzamtzing. You can add as much as you want, even though the extra is being done for after Yom Tov, but it's hutra. Because a certain amount I need today on Yom Tov, so it's hutra. Once it's hutra, you can already add more shiurim as long as you're doing it all in one ma'isa. But Shabbos, when you're dealing with pikuach nefashis, pikuach nefashis, even though it's mutter on Shabbos, but it's not hutra, it's hutcha. Since it's hutcha, we minimize and we only allow him to do that which he needs. We do not allow him to be mabe b'shiurim. Minat Torah. It's also minat Torah to be mabe b'shiurim since it's only hutcha. That's the shit of the Ran. So we have a machlokes Rashba and Ran, where the ריבוי שיעורים, everyone agrees that ריבוי שיעורים is us on Shabbos. Everyone agrees to that. The machlokes is it Issa D'Oraisa or is it Issa D'Rabbanan? The Rashba holds that it's Issa D'Rabbanan. Minat Torah, there's no difference in Shabbos and Yom Tov. But Rabbanan, because of Chumri the Shabbos, it's Issa Skila. Rabbanan were machmir not to do ריבוי שיעורים. The Ran disagrees that he holds that it's Issa D'Oraisa, that ריבוי שיעורים is an Issa D'Oraisa on Shabbos because it's hutcha, it's not hutra, and the heta of ריבוי שיעורים is only when the malacha is hutra, like oichel nefesh or tzorech hayom on Yom Tov, that's hutra. But pikuach nefashis on Shabbos is not hutra, it's only hutcha, and if hutcha has no heta ריבוי שיעורים. Now, Rav Chanan Wasserman in Kovet Shurim, Mesechus Beya, Ois Memches, wants to be miyashev the Ran's kasha on the Rashba. Ran has a bomber kasha on the Rashba. According to the Rashba, that ריבוי שיעורים minat Torah is mut even at Shabbos. So, fake the Ran, what was the Gemara's suffix? If you have a choice between cutting one twig that has 3 geroyos attached to it, or you have an option to cut off 2 separate twigs that have each one only 1 geroyos in. What's the shaila? Which one you should do? Of course, you should do the one. You should do the 2 that. Of course, you should do the one that has 3 geroyos attached. Because the one that has 3 geroyos attached, you're only doing one malacha. Because as soon as you matir 1 geroyos, the others are memela mutar. You only have to be matir 1. Mashenkin, if you're going to allow him to cut the 2 separate geroyos in, the 2 individual geroyos in have 1 each, and he's going to make 2 cuts, you're being matir 2 separate. They don't know ריבוי שיעורים. Because he's doing 2 separate cuts, 2 separate pu'ulos of talisha, of toilesh. So of course you tell him to take the one with 3. Akal, you always tell him to do whatever is less of an aveira. It's less of an aveira to take 1 with 3 than to take 2 with 1 each. Because 2 with 1 each, you have 2 separate acts of toilesh. 1 with 3 is only 1 talisha, and you only have to be matir 1 toilish, and the rest is memela mutar. That was the Ran's cash on the Rashba. Look Rabbi Chanan, that the pshat in the Rashba is the Rashba holds that the heta of ריבוי שיעורים is not like the Ran says, since it's hutra, mainly you can do more. You don't have to be medactic how much you're cooking. You can just fill up the pot as long as you're doing 1 ma'isa. No, that's not the point. The point is not the fact you're doing it in 1 ma'isa. The point is the person needs water, let's say. He needs water. He needs a quart of water. That's all he needs. And now he filled up the pot with 5 quarts of water. And he puts 5 quarts of water on top of the fire. But every quart of water that's in that pot is suitable for his needs. So, therefore, there's no issa. There's no chil yom to be done. Since we can't determine which is the one he needs, which is the one he's doing for today, which is the one that's for tomorrow. When he puts the pot of water on the fire, there's no chelik misuyim, there's no specific quart of water that's suitable for his yom tov needs. He can use any. All the water in that pot is suitable for his yom tov needs. So it's undefined which is the one that's being done for yom tov and which is the one that's being done for after yom tov. No one can. He has a choice. He can take any of the water. Any quart of water that's in this pot is suitable for his yom tov needs. Therefore, there's no chil yom tov altogether. But since we cannot pinpoint which is being done for yom tov, which is being done for after yom tov, and they're all roy, he needs 1 quart of water, and all the water in this pot is roy for his needs. The mela, there's no issa. That is the het Rebbe Shurim. Het Rebbe Shurim is that that since it's all chadi, it's all roy for his yom tov needs, he doesn't need 5 quarts, but any of the water could be that quart. It's Ememela, since you can't be messiah, you can't designate it, you can't pinpoint which is being done, which is being cooked for yom tov, which is being cooked after yom tov, and every chelik of this water is suitable, is chazi for his yom tov need. The mela, there's no chil yom tov over here. That's the heta of Rebbe Shurim, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he's doing it with one ma'isa. Rabbi Chanan says that according to the Rashba, if let's say a person needs 1 quart of water and he has 2 pots, each one has 1 quart of water in it, and he puts both of those pots on the fire at one time, he's doing 2 acts of bishul. That would also be mutter. That would also be considered Rebbe Shurim, even though he's doing 2 seven ma'asim. He's putting one with his right hand, one with his left hand, 2 seven ma'asim. Because the het has nothing to do with doing 1 act of bishul. Since if he would put one on the fire first, then the second one, that would be awesome, because by the time he does the second, he doesn't need any water anymore. But if he puts both on the fire at the same time, since at that time he needed 1 quart of water, and he puts both pots at the same time, and we don't know which is the one that he can use either one. Memela, they're both mutter. That's at the Rebbe Shurim. The Mela, Zucker B'chanan, the Ran's kasha is fancy because Ran had a problem. According to the Rashba, what's the more suffix? If you have 1 twig with 3 gregus and you have 2 twigs with 1 gregus each, so what's the suffix? Of course, you take the one with 3 because it's Rebbe Shurim. The answer is no. If you could take the one with 3 and you have the 2 with 1 each, and you can pull both off at the same time, that has the same heta of Rebbe Shurim, because it's the same svara. Even though you're doing two pulas of toilis, it doesn't matter. According to the Rashba, the heta of Rebbe Shurim is not because you're doing 1 pu'ula with a lot of shiurim more than you need. No, it's because since either one is suitable for my need, and we can't be done which one is the tzarech yom tov. Either one is the tzarech yom tov. I can use any one of the 2. I'm doing both at the same time, and at that point, at that time, I needed a quart of water. and I needed one Gregerson, and I'm pulling off the two Gregerson at one time, even though I'm doing 2 acts of toilish, because they're 2 separate twigs, and I'm pulling them both off at the same time, but that would also have the heter Shurim. So that's a very good shaila. Okay, here, both have the heter Shurim. Both. But it's also Mirabanan, it's also on Shabbos. What should I do? I have a choice. Should I do the one with 3 or the 2 with 1 each? Because one has a maila, it's only 1 peula. I take the 2, I'm doing 2 peulas. Midach Gisa, the one that's 1 peula, I'm detaching 3 Gregerson. If I do the 2, I'm only detaching 2. Well, very perfect, very kishmak shaila, but concludes, take the one with 3. But there's no shailas or Rebbe Shurim here. Both have the heter Rebbe Shurim. Even the 2 twigs with 1 each. If I do both at the same time, the bas achas, that also has the heter Rebbe Shurim. Shot in the Rashba. So we have now a Yisrael's machlokes between the Rashba and the Ran. Besides the Ika machlokes between the Rashba and the Ran, whether Rebbe Shurim is an Issa D'Oraisa or an Issa D'Rabbanan. The Rashba holds on Shabbos it's only an Issa D'Rabbanan. The Ran holds it's an Issa D'Oraisa because Yom Tov is Hutra, Shabbos is Hutcha. We have a whole new machlokes. What is the lumdis? What is the svara behind the heter Rebbe Shurim? According to the Ran, the heter is since the mice is hutra, so as long as I do it all in 1 peula, I can be mab as much as I want. But it's got to be 1 peula, according to the Ran. Got to be 1 peula, and I can do as much as I want. But if it's 2 separate peulas, there's no heter. Because the heter is geboit since this peula is hutra, but only 1 peula is hutra. So if I do 1 peula, I can be mab and do as much as I want. According to Rashba, the heter is not as hutra. The heter is because since either one is suitable for my either one is suitable for my needs. Therefore, there's no issa because we can't pinpoint which one is the chil Shabbos, which one. So both of them mutter, both of them machlal the heter. Because I can use either one for my tzorech of the kuch nefashos. They're both a mutter, and even if I do 2 separate meisim, as long as they're being done at the same time, the heter Rebbe Shurim minat Torah. Rabbanan itzas. So kum l'chayra, come out the shaila that we began discussing is the heter Rebbe Shurim only a heter to be mabe more of the same kind, or no, I can be mabe even different kinds. Like if I carry my house key, can I carry other keys together with the house key? Do we say it's mutal Rebbe Shurim on Yom Tiv? Do we say mutal Rebbe Shurim? Or no? Since I'm carrying a different type of key, there's no heter. We said the machlokes achrayim. The chayra, this should be totally in the machlokes Ran and Rashba. According to the Ran, that the side of Rebbe Shurim is because it's hutra. And once it's hutra, I can, as long as I'm doing all in one maisa, I can be mab as much as I want. So the chayre there should make no difference between being mab of the same min or being mab other min. The head is because it's hutra. This pula of carrying is hutra because I have a tzorech hayom to carry my key, my house key. It's hutra. So once it's hutra, I could be marba more as long as it's all part of the same ma'isa. So it shouldn't make any difference whether I'm being marba more of the same kind, like the case of the tissues, or I'm marba other meaning which are not suitable. That shouldn't make a difference. The heter is because it's hutra, and I'm doing 1 pula, which is hutra, that allows me to be marba shurim. Chayr should make no difference, more of the same kind or different kinds. Mashen came according to the Rashba, the Rebbe explains that heter Shurim has nothing to do with hutra. Heter Shurim and nothing to do with one ma'isa. it's only considered I'm doing it the basachas, and either one is suitable for my need, and we can't say, well, this is the one that's Chil Shabbos, and this is the one that's Tzarech. We can't say that because either one is chazi. At the time when I'm doing a malacha, either one is suitable for my need. Therefore, it's not us at all. Then it's pashit, like Rav Moshe Zitzal says, that svara is only shaykh if I'm doing more of the same kind. I'm taking a whole pack of tissues, I need 15. Any one of the 15, any 15 from this box are chazi for my need. I'm cooking 5 quarts of water. I only need 1 quart, but any quart in that pot is chazi for my needs. But if I carry my house key plus a bunch of other keys, the other keys will not accomplish my tzarech. I need my house key. So according to the Rashba, there be no heter of to carry more of a different kind. How do we pass it? Like the Rashba or like the Ran? So we'll see. We mentioned earlier Chafetz Chaim. I'm going to repeat it, and because there are many chidushim in that Chafetz Chaim. And by the way, the Chafetz Chaim in the Sefer Machane Yisrael, which is written for soldiers, went out of his way to look for kulas for soldiers, and one cannot rely on those psukim for stam. We'll see in a minute. For stam situations, those were dunder kulas, dunder heta that he went out of his way to be makel for soldiers. Now the Chafetz Chaim has a shaila. We mentioned that if a soldier is commanded on Shabbos to move on, so now what does he do? He's got his whole suitcase full of his belongings. He can't carry on Shabbos. So what does he have to leave everything behind? That's a hefsed meruba. So Chafetz Chaim comes with a heta. Now, before we said heta was Rebbe Shurim, but we have to understand Rebbe Shurim is not mutter on Shabbos. So Chafetz Chaim says more than just Rebbe Shurim. What he says is as follows. He says we have a machlokes Rishonim, Rashba and Ran, whether Rebbe Shurim is the Reis or Rabbanan. By the way, in the Mishnah Berurah, he paskins beferish that Rebbe Shurim is awesome in Torah. That's how he says, like the Ran. Here, Machne Yisrael, he says we can rely on the Rashba. So he says that the person is carrying his gun, that he has to carry. That's called the flushes. So once he's carrying his gun, he can carry along all his other belongings. He can carry along because Rebbe Shurim, and Rebbe Shurim is also. Dr. Chafetz Chaim, it's a shvus. We can rely on the Rashba that Rebbe Shurim is only mirabal, and even without Rebbe Shurim to carry in our streets, we can assume they have a din of a kamelis, not of Shus Rabbim. Rely on the shittas that you need shisha rebay. So we have a double drabanan. We have a drabanan the fact that our streets are kamelis, and the Easter to carry in our streets are only midrabanan. And then we have in the second drabanan of Rebbe Shurim. So to shvus, and memokim hefsed meruba. The law is you can be makel and shvus. And the Chafetz Chaim allows the soldier to carry his suitcase with all the belongings because of his shvus, the mokim hefsed meruba. Now, he's relying on the Rashba, even though, like I said, Mishmur says the favor, he doesn't even bring the Rashba. Mishmur is saying like the Ran, but for soldiers, he's being saying cool on the Rashba. He's saying cool on the Rashba, and he's also, now the chiddush here is, we mentioned earlier, that here he's being makel to consider Rebbe Shurim even different meaning. He needs his rifle. That's what he needs. That's what his head is to carry his rifle. That's good enough. Because of that, he allows him to carry all his belongings. Now that's a different min. That's a different min. And he's being mad to that. He's being makel. Now, there's a struggle problem over here, because if he's the way we said before, based on Rabbi Chanan, the Rashba holds that the Rebbe Shurim, in order to answer the Ran's kash on the Rashba, the Rashba holds the het Rebbe Shurim is not because of one Maisa, but rather because since each one is chali for his seirich, that's had to be sure. Even if it's done 2 separate nisim, but basakas, since each one of them is either one of them is chali for seirich, so Mela, there's no chil Shabbos in our Torah. And we said the Feirish that according to this, according to the Rav, there will be no heter of Rebbe Shurim to carry different meaning. Now here the Chafetz Chaim is relying on the Rashba. He's relying on the Rashba that Rebbe Shurim is only Rabbanan. But then, if we understand the Rashba, to answer the Ran's Kasha, we understand like Rabbi Chanan, then it would be a tata the Sasri to rely on the Rashba and to allow Rebbe Shurim even different meaning. That doesn't work out. Chafetz Chaim is doing that. Obviously, he must have had a different malach to fend for the Ran's Kash and the Rashba. I'm just pointing out the way Rabbi Chanan Wasserman understands the pshat in the Rashba in order to answer the Ran's Kash. The Rashba holds Rebbe Shurim is not dafka one ma'aser. The side of Rebbe Shurim is because either one is suitable for my need. That's why neither one is asa. But we said according to that, it comes out of kula that you can do 2 separate pulos. As long as they're done with basachas, it's okay. But middle gisa, there's a big chumrah in the Rashba that you can only carry more of the same kind. You can't carry a different kind because that's not suitable for my need. So here the Chafetz Chaim is relying on the Rashba that Rebbe Shurim is only midrabanan, and at the same time, the Chafetz Chaim is saying that we could use the head of Rebbe Shurim even to be matir different meaning. These two things don't really stim the way Rabbi Chanan explains the machlokes Rashba and Ran. But akapanim, one thing you see that even though the Mishnah Brura paskins like the Ramban, the paskin like the Ran, that Rebbe Shurim is also in our Torah, but you see if he is relying on the Rashba for the soldiers, that means that he's not paskining like the Ran b'Torah's vada. He's being machmir like the Ran. But if he's being soymech on the Rashba for the soldier, if the Rashba would be totally nitcha, then you can't rely on the Rashba. But Torah says it's not nitcha. Stamazoi, the Chafetz Chaim is machmir like the Ran that Rebbe Shurim and Shabbos also in our Torah. But for soldiers, he's being makel to rely on the Rashba that's only asa the Rabbanan. It's like upon him. If we go with Rabbi Chanan, so the original shaila, whether you can do more of the same, dafka more of the same kind, or you can even be mice of other kinds. And this is totally machlokes Rashba and Ran. So if we are soymech on the Ran the Kula, so you see that Chafetz Chaim didn't paskin like the Ran b'Torah's hechlin Torah's body, only has a chumrah. But middle gisa, we should have to be chayshish for the Rashba, and according to the Rashba, there's no head to be shurim unless he's doing more of the same kind. But if he's adding other kinds, other meaning that he has no tzorah for, there'd be no head to be shurim. So the chayr ladina, the case of the keys, it should come out that one should be machmir, like Ramesha Zatzal, and not carry extra keys that he doesn't need. Just want to say one suffer to this, and that's as follows. We know that on Shabbos and Yom Tov there's an Isha Tchum. Also to walk out of the Tchum. Every person, wherever he is, he has a Tchum. If a person is living in a city, his Tchum, he can walk the whole city, and he can walk 2,000 amas each side of the city, but no more than that. If he makes an Erev Tumim, that will allow him to walk more on one side, less on the other side. Every person has a Tchum. Now the law is that not only does the person himself has a restriction of Tchum Shabbos, anything that I own also has restrictions of Tchum Shabbos. So I own anything that belongs to me. My clothing, anything that I own, any object that I own cannot be taken out of my tchum. cannot be taken out of my tchum, the tchum of the owner. Cannot be taken out of the tchum of the owner. Because the Gemara says a person's chafetzim, a person's kalim, have the same mokum shvisa as the person himself. That's why if I lend somebody, let's say I lend somebody a tie on Shabbos, lend him a tie on Shabbos, and I happen to make an eruv to go further one direction, which cuts me off the other direction. But the one that borrowed the tie did not make an eruv. So his tchum is different than my tchum. So he cannot take that tie out of my tchum because it's my tie. If he would have borrowed the tie before Shabbos, then he would be considered the bailam, and it would be nigra after his tchum. But if he borrowed it first on Shabbos, so when Shabbos came, it was my tie, So it got all my dinei shvisa. So now when he borrows it, he cannot take this tie to any place. He cannot wear the tie to any place that's out of the tchum of the owner of the tie. You know, he borrowed it, but the tie is nigra after the owner, whoever owned it, ben hashmashes, and it cannot be taken out of the shmok and shvisa of the owner of that tie. That's the law. Anyway, so Reb Shlomo Zalman Oyabach Tzal has a very strong ha'ara, and many other Gedolei places have this ha'ara as well, and that's as follows. Let's say a person has to go out of the tchum on Shabbos for reasons of pikuch nefashos. Let's say a person has to bring his wife to the hospital, he's having a baby on Shabbos. He has to go with her, and the hospital is far away. It's out of the tchum. Of course, he's allowed to go. It's pikuch nefashos. He's allowed to go. But fake Reb Shlomo Zalman, okay, he has to go, but he doesn't have to. Now, of course, you can't make him go totally undressed, but he shouldn't be allowed to wear anything extra. He should not be allowed to wear his tie. He should not be allowed to wear his jacket. Go with a shirt and pants. Sometimes says even his yarmulke he shouldn't wear. Yarmulke is not a chiyuv deraisa to wear. Sometimes going out of a tchum could be a deraisa. According to the Rambam, more than Yudais know the deraisa. If the hospital is 15 miles out of the tchum, it's a deraisa, chashav a deraisa. So what's his heta? He has to go out of the tchum because pikuch nefashos. But what's his heta to get dressed normally? Take off his socks. Go with shoes without socks. Take off your talis cotton. You have to wear talis cotton. It's not a chiyuv. Can't be over this a chashav with a deraisa. It's no pikuch nefashos. It's no pikuch nefashos, and having to wear all these extra clothing, wear bare minimum, and that's it. What's the heta to go fully dressed? And nowhere do we find anyone that says that when a person is going out of the tchum for pikuch nefashos, that he's got to minimize the clothing that he's wearing. But the clothing that he's wearing has dinei shvisa. Just like I'm not allowed to take myself out of my tchum, I cannot take my objects, my clothing, including. I cannot take myself mefurish. A person wearing clothing, he has to make sure to wear those clothing only within the tchum of those clothing. Like I said, if the clothing belonged to someone else and I borrowed it, I have to make sure they don't go out of the tchum of the bailam. So what's my heta if I'm going for pikuch nefashos? But what's my heta? What's my heta to wear, to be fully dressed? Be fully dressed. Every article of clothes that I wear is an extra violation of tchum. So those clothing I have to wear. But extra clothing, why should I be allowed to wear them? Chaim Kanievsky Shlita also discusses this. Chaim Kanievsky says, interesting. He says a person knows, let's say a person knows his wife is due. So before Shabbos, if he knows he has to go out of the tchum, he should be mafke all his clothing. He should mafke all his clothing because nichse hefka not kind of he says he should mafke all his clothing in front of 3 people. But I never heard anyone do that. So it's a problem. So Rosh Hashanah himself said a big chiddush. He said it's a big chiddush. He says that since the Lashon Gemara is that a person's objects, the person's chafetzim, have the din of the bailam, the din of its bailam, din of its owner. So he wants to say a chiddush. If the owner himself is allowed to go chutz etchom because of pikuch nefashos, the clothing have that same din. even though there's no pukul fashes to take the clothing out of the tchum, but that is the halach of a person's chafetzim. They have the din of the bailam. And if the bailam have a head to become pukul fashes, the clothing are also allowed to go out of the tchum. Big chiddush, but that's what he says. Now, l'chayr, one could have said that maybe he's allowed to take the clothing because we be shurim. According to the Rajba, according to the Ran, it's not going to help because Rebbe Shurim is awesome in our Torah. It doesn't make it on Shabbos. So it doesn't make it any more kal. But according to the Rajba, the Rebbe Shurim on Yom Tiv, on Shabbos is only Mirabanan. So since he's allowed to go and he's wearing his clothing, it's all being done in one Maisa. So maybe you have Rebbe Shurim. But it's not going to work really, the way we said, because since, according to the Rajba, the way Rabbi Chanan understands the Rajba, the head to Rebbe Shurim is only more of the same kind. More of the same kind. So the fact that he's allowed to go, it's not going to be mat to take his clothing along with him. It's not more of the same kind. According to the Ran, it's not going to work because Rebbe Shurim on Shabbos, it's also a Torah. So B'chal doesn't make it more kal. And according to the Rajba, it's Rabbanan, so it should make it more kal. Should knock it down to a Rabbanan, even if he's going out of Yubei's mill, which is at the rice, according to some Rishonim, but it should make it should decrease the Issa to a Rabbanan. But the way we said, Rabbi Chanan, that according to the Rajba, the Rebbe Shurim is only more the same kind. It's not going to help us. Here, the fact that I'm allowed to go because the fashes, well, one could say perhaps, but one could say, maybe I'm just thinking now, as the minimum, no one, for sure he's not believed to go undressed. That's not shaykh. Not shaykh will never go. That's part of the Kuchen Fashes. His basic clothing, he's certainly allowed to wear. Like Yoshev says that, let's say a doctor gets a call Friday night, somebody had a heart attack. So, and any minute could be a chash, life and death. So what should he do? He should go in his pajamas. He go in his pajamas. But Yosef says no. Even though to get dressed take time, that maybe that every minute counts. But he says you make him go with pajamas, he's not going to do it. He's going to be so embarrassed. He's just not going to be able to do it correctly. He won't go with his resources. It just won't get done. It won't get done properly. So he's allowed to get dressed, even though it'll take a couple of minutes. Allowed to get dressed. So the same thing is true. That no one has the kasha. They should have to go totally undressed. But the kasha was minimum. Wear minimum clothing. Don't wear the extras. So kumtais, there is a head to walk out with some clothing. Okay, but still not gonna help us. But it's different clothing. You can wear a shirt, but what's that to wear his jacket? Yeah, so it's still a different min. It's still a different min. So it's not going to work. Side of the Rajba, side of the Ran is not going to work. So the kasha remains. What's the head to the go? What's the head to the go with the extra clothing? Only mahalach you have either to be mafkrid, which is not something that's done, or sometimes mahalach that since the person's chafetzim has a din of the bailam, that's lashon gemara. Din of the bailam, one could say that if the bailam allowed to go, kuchen fashes, so the clothing are also allowed to go, even though there's no kuchen fashes for the clothing, take the clothing along, extra clothing, but that's halacha. Person's chafetzim have the din of the person himself. So wherever the person that had to go is chafetzim have that same head.